The Ukrainian question in the 1920s to 1930s was more complicated than in 1914. At that time, the Ukrainian lands were parts of the Austro-Hungarian and Russian empires. After World War I, Ukrainians were the only nation whose rights to self-determination at the peace conference in Paris were ignored. So in the process of demarcation of new borders, the ethnic Ukrainian lands became a part of 4 different foreign states, namely Soviet Russia, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Poland. In these conditions, Ukrainian emigration tried to unite all European forces that could be useful for the cause of the liberation of Ukraine. In turn, leaders of some European countries and their diplomacy tried to play out the so-called Ukrainian map on the eve of the Second World War. During the national liberation struggle in the period of 1917 to 1921, and during the time of the existence of the Ukrainian People's Republic, Ukrainians began to think that they were worthy and had the right for an independent state. However, according to the Paris Peace Conference of 1919 to 1920, the Ukrainian lands for many years were divided by the borders of the aforementioned 4 states. The Paris Conference was in favor of the winners. That is, the Entente attempted to establish the borders, especially in Eastern Europe. Then the leaders of these countries had great expectations that an even larger Ukraine would emerge, because at that time the Western Ukrainian Republic was also fighting for its existence. There were different schemes for solving this issue. We know that the attempts of Ukrainians who had come to terms with the dispute with Poland, alas, failed at the Paris Conference. It was very complicated for them. Ukrainians who ended up in the composite of foreign countries felt an intolerable regime that was accompanied by brutal terror. Bukovina was under the hegemony of Romania. The Romanians persecuted Ukrainians, the Ukrainian spirit and the Ukrainian national forces. They conducted extremely brutal so-called Romanization. In order to weaken the Ukrainian movement in Galicia, the Polish authorities in the autumn of 1930 resorted to brutal repressions with the use of the police and army against the Ukrainian civilian population. They were named pacifiers, meaning that presumably they were appeasers. The military destroyed Ukrainian cooperatives, reading rooms, the Prosvita department, closed school and gymnasiums, disbanded youth organizations, confiscated property, and physical reprisals were commonplace. In 1934, mostly Ukrainians were confined to a concentration camp in the town of Bereska-Katruska as political prisoners. The status of Ukrainians under the hegemony of Czechoslovakia, then one of the most democratic countries, markedly differed from the conditions of Ukrainians in Poland and Romania. The authorities tried to improve the economic situation in Transcarpathia, but failed to overcome the terrible poverty. According to the Treaty of Saint-Germain, Czechoslovakia assumed obligations, which included this territory in its membership in order to give it autonomous rights. These rights were not introduced in Transcarpathia until 1938, but we must point out that Prague assumed these obligations to Carpathian Rus at the time when it was accepted in the year 1919. In those Ukrainian territories occupied by Soviet Russia, the Bolsheviks organized the Great Famine, or Holodomor, when millions of Ukrainians became victims. Of course, the former leaders of the Ukrainian National Republic, the Western Ukrainian National Republic, and nationally conscious intelligentsia were in different countries of Europe and were hoping to return to a free and independent native Ukraine one day. In order to achieve this goal, they united and formed an organization of national patriotic orientation. The former colonel of the UNR army, Yevhen Konovalets, united all of these organizations to launch a single Ukrainian public political movement and establish a Ukrainian collegiate independent state, and to develop it and preserve it.
полковник Євген Коновалець.
Amazingly, Colonel Yevhen Konovalets never surrendered after defeat and in 1921 to 1922 founded the underground Ukrainian military organization with his colleagues.
Підпільну українську військову організацію, яка перебрала на себе
It played the key role in the struggle for the restoration of Ukrainian statehood and the unification of the Ukrainian nation in a single state.
Державності і воз'єднання української нації в єдиній соборній державі.
In November 1927, upon the initiative of Konovalets, a decision was made to create a single revolutionary political organization, the activities of which would be based on nationalist ideology and spread throughout all of Ukraine. In early 1929, the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, OUN, was established at the Congress of Vienna, and Yevhen Konovalets was elected the chairman. Then he built an international network of his organization, with representative offices in the United States, Germany, Lithuania, Spain, Italy, Finland, Bulgaria, Manchuria, France, Belgium, and Great Britain. Their task was to inform the world about matters in Ukraine. Today it is well known that Great Britain was actively responding to the issue of Ukrainian emigration. Even then, it was obvious that the United Kingdom and its positions were always in favor of Ukraine, compared to French diplomats, who did not see an independent Ukrainian state in the new European structure. Unlike the French, the British treated these issues from a completely different point of view. This outburst of interest in the 1930s was based on the fact that there were constant contacts and interesting meetings. Obviously, we can say that European leaders were concerned about what might happen. There were most likely diplomatic attempts to change the situation and seek new options for the development of Europe in the 1930s. On May 29, 1935, upon the initiative of the Anglo-Ukrainian Committee, public hearings devoted to the situation regarding Ukraine were held in the courtroom of the House of Commons of the Parliament of Great Britain under the chairmanship of the authoritative Member of Parliament, John Hills. One of its founders and most active members, a British journalist, internationalist, Lancelot Lawton, made a report entitled The Ukrainian Question, which was published on behalf of the committee.
Це був заклик Ланселота Лавтона до британського уряду.
It was the appeal of Lancelot Lawton to the British government to pay more attention to Ukraine and more actively support the Ukrainian liberation movement, find contacts and understanding with its representatives.
Порозуміння, можливо, в майбутньому і спільних дій.
Speaking about the mass repressions of the Bolshevik dictatorship on the territory of the USSR, Lawton argued that the Great Famine that devastated Ukraine in 1932 to 1933 was totally orchestrated and was an integral part of these repressions. In summary, the British journalist drew his conclusion. It would be hypocritical to deny that Ukraine's independence is just as important for our state as for the rest of the world. The problem has been ignored for too long because it is very difficult to discuss it and even more difficult to resolve it. But this problem with deep and complicated historical roots has gained unprecedented acuteness today. What is the point of making peace when there is no peace? It will not happen until a rational solution is found to the Ukrainian problem. In 1935, an event occurred that demonstrated significant changes in the attitude of British people towards Ukraine. 14 members of the British Parliament and 6 well-known public figures appealed to the League of Nations with a petition in which they protested against the oppression and persecution of the Ukrainian population in Poland. The League of Nations considered the issue of violation of the rights and freedoms of Ukrainians in the occupied territories twice. However, its decisions were declarative and had no real impact on the situation. But according to Ukrainian historians, such appeals have contributed to the spread of information about Ukraine on the international arena during the interwar years. Germans had totally different views about Ukraine. In 1933, the National Socialist Party openly declared the need for geopolitical changes in Europe and called Ukraine as Lebensraum in the East. The German-Polish Pact of January 26, 1934 enhanced the tension around Ukrainian ethnic territories.
В 1934 році, це відомий факт, німецький уряд провів офіційні переговори.
In 1934, the German government held official talks with Polish leaders, which proposed a union of Poland, exchange of borders. In particular, the Germans offered the so-called corridor, which divided East Prussia and mainland Germany.
Польща віддає їм Гданськ, так званий Данцигський коридор, який розділяв Східну Прусію і материкову Німеччину. Тобто, що Польща віддає...
Poland, in exchange for Gdansk, would give Germany this corridor, and Germany would grant Poland the right to realize its territorial aspirations east of the Polish borders, that is, the territory of Ukraine to the Black Sea.
На схід від польських кордонів, тобто територія України, включно аж по Чорне море.
For the second time, the Ukrainian problem got on the agenda of the German policy after the Munich Agreement of 1938, when the Ukrainian Transcarpathia, taking advantage of the actual collapse of the Czechoslovak Republic, gained autonomy. These signs of Ukrainian statehood frightened Hungary, the USSR, Poland, and Romania, which protested, and soon the problem of the Carpathian Ukraine became the main obstacle to the so-called Soviet-German understanding.
В той період була дуже активна пресова кампанія на Заході, яка говорила про те, що Гітлер планує створити велику Україну.
At that time, there was a very active press campaign in the West, which said that Hitler was planning to create a large Ukraine based on the Carpathian Ukraine. But Stalin was afraid that some kind of a group in the environment around Hitler would plan some kind of scheme in that direction.
Якась група в середовищі навколо Гітлера може планувати, власне, щось в цьому напрямку. І 10 березня 1939 року фактично Сталін на 18...
On March 10, 1939, Stalin at the 18th Congress of the Communist Party made it clear that the Soviet Union would never accept these plans. He compared Carpathian Ukraine with a booger. It was exactly then that he made it clear that he was prepared to cooperate with Hitler. In this way, the issue of Ukraine was closed, and this opened the path to forming an alliance between Germany and the Soviet Union.
І 39-й рік це чітко показав.
On August 23, 1939, a non-aggression pact between Hitler's Germany and the Soviet Union was signed in Moscow. And on September 1st, Germany invaded Poland. Hitler hoped that Stalin would attack Poland at the same time that he would.
А Сталін говорить, нам ще треба 2 тижні, щоб підготувати.
Stalin retorted, "We need 2 more weeks to prepare for it." So what did the German Foreign Ministry and Hitler do? On September 9th, at a meeting of the German troops at Hitler's headquarters, the question of the possible formation of a Ukrainian state on the territories of the captured Poland was raised. Moscow leaders got the hint. They responded, "We're ready to invade, but we need a good reason for this." The USSR leaders said, "Let us invade the villages in order to protect the Ukrainians and Belarusians from you, from the fascists." In Berlin they said, "Are you out of your mind? We're allies. Let's say you're avoiding chaos."
Вони кажуть, давайте так, давайте ви напишіть, що ви захищаєте від хаосу.
On September 17th, the Soviet Union invaded Poland. On September 22nd, a joint military parade of the Wehrmacht and the Red Army took place. And on September 28th in Moscow, the Treaty on Friendship and the border between the USSR and Germany was signed. Then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Germany officially supported the cessation of propaganda on the Ukrainian issue. The dismemberment of Ukraine after World War I between its neighbors, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Soviet Russia, further exacerbated the problem of creating national Ukrainian statehood. Representatives of the National Patriotic Movement of Emigration continued an active struggle to defend the Ukrainian issue and tried to take advantage of every possible opportunity at international forums and conferences to raise the issue of the need to solve the Ukrainian problem.